Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to call the meeting to order. It's just a little bit after 6, and I appreciate all the people that are here live. Can you hear me in the back if I speak this loud? No microphone required? Thank you. And also the people that are online. We have a number of participants online. So I'll try to remember to repeat questions so everyone online can hear the questions because it might not be audible. Oh, I thought somebody was asking me a question already. So here we go. So we put together a little presentation to talk about our capital funding at Monroe. And capital funding relates to our maintenance, upkeep for all our infrastructure related items, whether it's golf related, house related, pool related, everything related, all the costs that we incur. It's called capital. So we're going to, in terms of our agenda for today, I'm trying to get this thing to move.
You can use it down there. I think we
Okay.
fix that.
I'll click on the next slide. I can do that. I'm good. So our agenda, if you look at it, we're going to talk a little bit just about our capital planning process. We've gone through a comprehensive review, Scott and his staff, in terms of the capital needs of Monroe for the next 5 years to give membership a look over 5 years. And we actually had a bonus 6-year in there. As you can see, there's some big things on the horizon. Talk about capital funding sources. Where do we get the money to pay for all our capital goods here? Show 5-year capital expenditures, what we anticipate we'll need to spend over the next 5 years. Talk about our debt service and where that's going to go. I know a number of people always have questions. When is it going away? And what does that mean to the club when that does go away? So we'll summarize that. Talk about our proposal that we put forth, and then show what the capital funding would look like if the membership were to approve the proposal. And then go through next steps, and then obviously open to any questions that you all have. I'll just tell you, you don't really need to wait till the end for questions. If you're here in the room, raise your hand. I'll acknowledge and we'll go from there if you want clarity on something that we're looking at this point. If you're out in the hinterland on the Zoom, please, I think we have a chat going, so please send your questions into the chat and we'll respond to them that way. So in terms of capital, just to give people a background, there's really two things we talk about with capital. One is obligatory capital, and then the second is aspirational capital. And what we're talking today is about what I call obligatory capital. That is really the nuts and bolts associated with just the routine repairs, maintenance, and upkeep of all the capital assets of Monroe Golf Club. The aspirational items would be major projects in terms of renovation and sort of when we went through that master plan exercise 6 months ago, most of what was in the master plan, there was some that was obligatory, but most of it was aspirational. So we've decided to focus on obligatory. In terms of where our capital funding comes from, it comes from new member initiation fees. That's about 3/4, 75% of our capital funding comes from new initiation fees, and 25% presently comes from our monthly capital assessments. And a matter of note for the accountants and finance people, depreciation expense, which is a non-cash charge, I'll just say it that way as an accountant, is really not a significant source of cash flow. It really supports the operation of the club to a positive surplus from operations. So there isn't a lot of money left over to also fund capital. In terms of the capital funding items, in terms of what we anticipate spending, this is the revenue side. In terms of what revenue we expect, we have new member initiation fees at $450 and then settling at $400,000 for the next 4 years. Last year was a really big year. Excuse me. We increased our golf memberships. We're at a high of we're approximately 360 right now, up from 350. So there was some incremental initiation fees for the difference in classifications that we collected. But in addition, most of our initiation fees are not totally from new members. Most of these dollars represent the scheduled payment plans associated with existing members. And as we look at, so while it seems high to have $400,000 a year, when we look at our scheduled payments, probably 75% of that is already guaranteed in terms of amounts that we're scheduled to collect from people who are already in the club, making those annual payments relative to their original initiation. Pardon me? Question? No. In addition, you can see the monthly capital fees right now at our $25 a month shows that we get about $130,000, $134,000 a year from that. And so our total capital available for funding it's at 584 this year or next year, and then it really goes to about 530 going forward. In terms of our projections for what capital needs have, our capital needs have been trending somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 a year. And when you look at our 5-year projection, and this was put together with a comprehensive look at the various items we believe need to be done. So it's not a wish list of niceties. It's more a list of things we need to do or should do around the club. So I want to point that out. It's not aspirational at all. It's obligatory maintenance of our facilities. You can see we have 4 years somewhere between 600 and 650,000. We have an exception in 2026. 2026, there's 2 big things we think are likely to have to be done. One is replace the roof on this whole facility. We've been putting the roof off for a number of years. We really believe we're at the end of that ability to kick the can down the road. And so we have slotted it in for happening in the fall of 2026. The second thing is our parking lots. Our parking lots, I don't know if everyone knows, they're sort of sliding, they're shifting. So they need to be rebuilt, redone, and we plan to do both of those in 2026. We think we can get through another couple of years. I just say that we can't push it out any longer. We want to give some time to build up some capital funds through we're hoping through a higher level of capital funding on the part of the members, so that at the end of the day, when the time comes to do those things, we won't have to make as large an assessment. It's likely there will be some type of member assessment needed to complete those repairs, because we don't think we'll have accumulated, I know we won't accumulate the money we need to do both of those jobs. And we'll also look at debt service. Again, the interest rate environment is not favorable to the club right now to borrow anything. So we really don't want to be borrowing any kind of long-term money at this point in time to do these things. So keep in mind, there's a couple big things that we need to do that are critical. Relative to non-discretionary use of our capital funds, right now off the top, we have $256,000, $250,000 approximately is the debt service associated with the term loan on the building. That's done in March of 26. So beginning in March of 26, we will not be making those bank payments. And then beginning in 2027, we'll have an additional $250,000 of cash flow because we don't have that debt service anymore. And there's a small amount associated with the East End bond financing that goes, it seems like forever, and it has cost us about $6,000 a year, give or take. In terms of after non-discretionary applications, just to show the members what our funding looks like and why we're concerned and why we believe, the board believes we need to raise the capital funding. Our funding source number that we just talked about is the top line. You can see we back off the debt service, come down then to amounts available after non-discretionary. You could see we have 328 and then about 400,000 to 500,000 a year thereafter. The 500,000 is obviously because of the debt service going away. In terms of when you layer that on with our 5-year capital projection of spends, you could see the remaining funds available, we take off our capital leases. Capital leases are our financing vehicle for primarily equipment and the golf cart fleet. Those are the 2 primary areas. So in the maintenance area for the mowers and greens mowers and those kinds of things. High tech, we're on a 5-year lease arrangement. And you look at those dollars and they're going up from about 60% with the new lease that we're entering into, that we have to enter into, and we're going to spend almost $300,000 a year in our capital leases. Again, we had a very favorable lease rate when Matt had a 5-year lease originally for the greens and grounds, but with that high technology equipment, two things have happened. One, at the end of the lease term, you want to get rid of it because it's something that things that are used daily and they're worn out and there's a lot of repairs and maintenance and it's time to just turn it over to take advantage of improved quality as well as improved technology. There's significant technology built into that. So, and then the interest rate environment is substantially different now than when that lease was entered into 5 years ago. It's likely the lease rate back then would have been low 1, 2, 3% kind of thing. And now we're looking at 7, 8+% in terms of financing. So it makes a tremendous difference in the dollar value of the payments that we need to make. So we take out the capital leases, then the next line is the capital, non-capital lease expenditures. These are other items, the repairs and maintenance around the club, other things we, for example, whether it's carpeting or furnishings or whatever it might be, you could see the amount. That's where the roof in 2026, the roof in the parking lot are, and you can see the deficit. So we're running a deficit is projected for 2025 of about 270,000. Then we have the big deficit because of the roof in the parking lot. And then after that, we sort of settle out at a deficit of about $100,000 a year from our capital side, meaning we're not generating enough funds from our capital dues and from our initiations to cover our capital needs for the club, just to stand still, to maintain things, not anything aspirational. In terms of our proposal, so I just want to preface this. So you'll note that the current proposal is to raise the golf fee from 25 to 75, and I'll point out that the golf fee's been the same since it was implemented approximately 9 years ago now. Never changed. Our social monthly capital fee, we're looking for that to go 15 to 45. And we did get some feedback about this, like why are we presenting the same proposal if members voted it down once before? And really, we think there was on our end, the board, we had this master plan, which sort of muddied the waters. We talked about the master plan, how much the capital needs would be for the master plan, what it would be, how much it might cost members. And then at the same time, we had this underlying issue with respect to what we're calling just our normal routine maintenance and upkeep of our facilities and equipment and all those types of things. So we still believe it's appropriate. We still believe it's a need. At the same time, we wanted to make sure there was clarity that what we're talking about is just basic repairs and maintenance and upkeep, nothing more. And so the members have a clear understanding of that and can recognize that it is something based on these numbers that we need to do organizationally. If you look at what the revised picture would be, if we show the added impact, so the initiation fees are the same as the previous slide. Same thing with the current monthly capital fees, but then the delta in terms of additional capital fees, you could see was about $260,000 a year. So that raises our cash flow or our net available funding sources to almost $800,000 a year going forward. If you plug that into the same template, you take out the debt service, you could see after non-discretionary items we have available from, excuse me, please. You could see we have approximately between $700,000 and $780,000 a year going forward to meet our capital needs of the club with those different fee structures. And the last slide again shows the same thing with our capital equipment and our leases and our capital expenditures. You could see in 2025, it's sort of a break even. In 2026, it's a deficit of $880,000 that we'll have to figure out how we're going to pay for those items. And then you see we hit this point where we're at about $150,000 cash build for reserve funds for capital items. And again, we anticipate in 2026 deciding based on the economic conditions, interest rate environments, et cetera, how we'll manage the roof and the parking lot that need to be done. Just in way of comparison, so people always ask where others are. From a monthly golf and dues, there's Oak Hill, there's CCR and Monroe. We find personally, Oak Hill seems a little bit out there, from a benchmark club these days. They've gone a more national model of how they operate, economic model that's substantially different than all the rest of us. CCR is the closest, and you can see that their dues are slightly less than us, and their monthly capital fee is about $100 a month. If you looked at other clubs, Irondequoit's around $160 a month. I'm trying to think. There's one other one in there that was about $160 a month, and we're at $25. We stand out in every comparative analysis because we're so low for the amount of capital we have invested. Again, in summary, current capital costs have increased tremendously. Our fees haven't gone up since 2015. Everything we look to purchase or lease is substantially higher costs, significant inflation in what we're doing. So having the same level of capital available to us doesn't work anymore. There's a long list of needed equipment replacements, obligatory items. Facilities and equipment are aging and need replacement. And we do need to have some rainy day funds, some capital reserve funds. So every time something breaks or it's not a fire drill. And we think that would allow us to be on better financial footing and allow us to remain a premier club in the Rochester marketplace, which is where we position ourselves to be with our competitors. We also have just some information. I'm not going to go through this, just to give people an idea of some of the things that we own. It's a lot of equipment items. There's a lot of things between building and equipments in terms of both at the clubhouse, on the relative to the golf course, the golf shop, etc. I'm not going to go through all these. You'll have access to this presentation that you can reflect on once this meeting's done. It's supposed to be posted to our website, so you'll be able to look at that in detail. Next steps. So we're hopeful you'll take this in, understand where the club is coming from, why the board feels we need to increase this amount, and a vote would be scheduled in concert with the semi-annual meeting, which is in the July timeframe. July 31st is the annual meeting. We'll have 2 weeks after that to go through it, and then we would implement any revised fees on September 1. I think come at the mid-year meeting, we're going to talk about, again, rehash this again for members so they hear it. We anticipate we'll have a lot more members in-house and seats, so I apologize that you might have to listen to sort of the same spiel twice, but we think it'd be beneficial for all the people in the room to hear this. Unfortunately, the participation, I think we had approximately 30 people this morning between Zoom and here, and I guess as it's likely about the same here this evening. So with that, I'll stop and I'll open it up for any questions that the members have that I can respond to. Anything in the chat, Scott?
No. Ken passed out the
Oh yeah.
I'd like to raise a question too. So this is our 5-year obligatory capital list that we identified amongst the various aspects of the club, and just kind of line by line detail of what we think we need to spend money on over the next 5 years. And
Scott, are we going to be posting that on the website?
we will.
Yeah, so one of the things, just for the people on the Zoom, Scott is handing out a listing of all the items that make up our anticipated capital spend over the next 5 years. And you'll be able to see that posted to the website. It's an Excel spreadsheet.
We want to talk about 2030. What we think might be coming down the road. There's more.
Yeah. So everyone has this in front of them. The one thing we talked about the next 5 years, which we have two major things. We have the roof and the parking lots. We anticipate somewhere in the next 10 years that we'll need to do an irrigation system because our irrigation system is almost 30 years old. And at the same time, our bunkers are, the renovation we did is all already past 15 years. So we're in a position of, once you tear up the golf course for irrigation, you might as well fix the bunkers again and replenish them. And each of those have a pretty significant price tag associated with them.
Million plus,
Pardon me?
billion plus.
3 million each. Yeah, so there, it's right in the schedule in front of you. So it's on there. I know, that's what we were trying to fit it on there.
Really want to read it.
That is not true. We're trying to be transparent, but those are big items. Yeah. Yeah.
People might be more comfortable just having an assessment, thereby knowing exactly where their dollars are going, rather than the piecemeal $100 a month or $75 a month. I mean, I think there's a little conversation that I've heard just with respect to the fact that, okay, it's carte blanche. You know, here, we're giving you the money, you're gonna spend it however you want to do it, rather than, okay, we're gonna do a roof, it's $1 million, divided by 500 people, this is gonna be an assessment, we need it, everybody knows we need it. So,
The hard part, I hear what you're saying, and there's some where I could see that would be beneficial for some people. The problem is that in addition to those big things, we still incur over $500,000 a year in capital needs, just regular ongoing kind of things. And the idea, it's really the thought of having to assess members every year for capital, I think would be unsettling to some, that they don't know what it's going to be, where it's going, whatever. And at the same time, we have this responsibility to what we've already invested in, to not let it fall apart. You know, we're on borderline with some things right now.
Bill, the other issue would be that assessment would have to come up each year in the vote. You have to be 66, you have to be 66%.
Right.
To include that every year. Right. So that'd be a time, and say, okay, this year we're gonna ask, you know, this, we're gonna replace it. Okay.
We do, I mean, we do share with the members a capital budget. So as part of our budget process, I think the information that's shared with the membership each year is a listing of the expected outflows for capital. And then annually, you get a report back that shows, here's what was budgeted, and here's what we spent against that. And there is some contingency built in, Bill, so for unforeseen kind of items.
From the old days.
Yeah.
What did they do? It was just part of the dues, right? Rather than having this other thing, there's just the dues. The dues are going up 8%. Sorry, folks. We can't buy lawnmowers if we don't raise the dues, right?
I will be honest, that is likely what transpired. So now there's a heightened scrutiny by members over the dues increases, right?
Yeah.
So the board is conscious of that and tries to hold the line between, here's our operational items, here's our capital items, trying to keep them separate so people can see. So you're right that you could fund it all with higher dues, but no club does that anymore, Bill. I mean, it's really interesting. And I think it's the whole thing of trying to say your dues are X dollars, but when you look at the all-in monthly obligations, they're higher. 10% higher, or 10, 12% higher. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, and the reason we did, we had no capital reserve of passive. Capital fix. The irrigation pump, with the pump kept long, and then we decided to buy a pump and, you know, an extra to keep it there. Some, the pool would always have something, but then it continues. I mean, how old is that pool?
60 years.
And that's just even maintaining, not doing what the town should do. But, so those things, so it was Jim Albaso's, his presidency that we said, okay, we gotta come up with at least a pocket of cash so that we can fix those things immediately that need to be fixed when they break. And then it just ended up that there's so many things that are out there that can break, and we want to keep the club at a certain level, and I think that's a lot of the reason that we're not talking about anything exciting, it's just.
And I think the other thing is that I think we erred a little bit in not increasing it along the way, Bill. Meaning we've left it alone for 9 years now. And again, in deference to members, I know members are concerned about how much it costs and they don't want us accumulating their money. But the reality is we needed more money from members along the way. And we wouldn't be looking for a $50 increase now had we been raising it $5 or $10 every year as inflationary pressures came about.
When times are good, we don't ask for the money. When times are not so good, we have to ask for the money. Right? Sort of like when the economy was flying high, we did nothing. Now the economy is okay, and we have to ask for the money. People kind of balk at it and say, well, the economy is not as good as it was. Maybe they don't want to spend that money right now.
Mhm.
Right? So I think lesson learned is when things are good in the economy, we should probably be getting our loans, getting that 5% interest rate that was out there 5 years ago or whatever it was, right? It probably would have been your time to do it, right? So lesson learned, I think. My opinion.
I
Steve,
think
you
so.
know that,
It's nice that everybody today,
I mean,
especially borrowed, we bought everything, bought a car, and now it's 7%, I wish I did, it was 3%.
Yeah.
You're right.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Everybody got
Just saying,
3% was a mistake.
yeah, lesson learned though, right?
Yeah.
It's like in the future, if this occurs, you go and lock it in.
I think Monroe is, on the head. Yeah, we should have been doing this every year. It should have been $5, 30, 35, 40, 45. I mean, inflation alone.
Yeah.
Tells you that we are way behind.
And I think it's a lesson learned for us. So I think the board is conscious of that too. So we would anticipate that going forward.
Yeah, not point figure. But just
No, understand. Yeah.
And maybe tie things to inflation to a certain extent, say, hey, guys, inflation's 3%, guess what? Oh, things are going up 3%. Or more.
Well, that's kind
I
of.
think we did it with the dues.
We did, yeah, right, okay, yeah.
We just didn't go,
Or maybe starting with the capital expenditure fund, maybe.
I'll add, I think you make a great point, Mr. Creary. It's sort of, I mean, I've been here 11 years now. And going back to one of my first days, the thought for many years of my 11 years here is when are we going to be debt free? When are we going to be debt free? It wasn't, let's go borrow more money because interest rates are low. Let's add to our debt. The focus was when are we going to be debt free? When are we going to be debt free? So it's just a mentality shift. But I mean, a lot of thought and a lot of comments and a lot of feedback for the 11 years I've been here is, well, when are we going to be debt free? And that debt was at 3.5%. So it's just the mentality and what happens if you run at zero, if you want to break even all the time, then you're never refilling your capital. And as things get older and things break and things decline, then you're left without the money because you run even every year. You run this break even, and that's why we're sort of behind the 8 ball on some of our capital items. It's because we've been running at zero break even for quite some time, but the roof's getting older every year. Those kinds of things. So,
And I think the one thing I'd add to that relative to debt free, that was a push around here. But when we looked at inquired with club benchmarking, it's the rare club that's debt free. Ones that are charging significant dues, significant initiation, significant assessments. We're not in that mode of operation here. So any significant capital expenditures, I think will be part of the answer going forward. Again, assuming we can time it right for an appropriate interest rate environment. Any other questions there? Nothing. Well, I really appreciate you all making the time on this beautiful evening to come out and hear me ramble on about capital funding needs, and appreciate your support of Monroe Golf Club for sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone on the Zoom.